Welcome to Parenting Successful Teens, the podcast that cuts through the overwhelm and stress of this phase and offers parents simple, practical, cognitive, science-based strategies for keeping their teens on track. Join Master Coach and real-life mom, Allie Irwin, to talk about real teens, real problems, and the skills it takes to raise successful adults.
All right, so today's podcast was just field tested on my son, who called at the perfect time. He called with an issue that he's having at work, and I just ran him through the process that we're going to talk about right now, and he said it was helpful. So this is officially Successful Teen approved, because let me tell you, that kid is killing it. He's doing so well. I told him he's intimidating to me. He's so successful, which is what we want, right? Like, that's what we want. So what I want to talk to you today is the idea that in any conversation that any two people have, there are actually three conversations happening. There's the conversation that you're having with yourself while you're talking to the other person. Because there's the things that you're thinking, and then there's the things that you say. And most people don't say everything that they're thinking. So an example of this might be something like you're thinking, oh, my daughter's got to get her homework done before she goes to see her friends. And then you start thinking, oh, she's not going to want to do her homework. And, oh, it's going to be a problem that I'm going to tell her that she has to finish it before she goes to see her friends. And like in your head, even before you start talking to her, you have this whole conversation about how hard it's going to be to get her to do her homework before she goes out with her friends. And so there's the conversation that you have internally, and then you initiate the conversation externally. Okay, so there's what you're thinking, and then what you actually say. And what you're saying to her and what she's saying back to you is that second conversation. So there's a conversation with yourself and now a conversation with the other person. And then what happens is they hear the words that you're saying, and then that begins their internal conversation. They start having like, oh, my mom's such a nag. She doesn't understand this isn't due for days. She doesn't understand how stupid this assignment is. Only take me 15 minutes. Why is she always like this? She makes such a big deal out of everything. Like, who knows what she's thinking, but she's definitely thinking something all the while you're encouraging her to finish her homework before she goes to see her friends. And where these conversations go astray is most of that conversation that we're having with the other person, we use that conversation as evidence to reinforce our own conversation that we were already having in our minds. And the other person is doing the same thing. So everything she says, you're taking as evidence to what you already thought, which is that it's going to be a problem, like she's going to throw a fit when you ask her to finish her homework. And everything you say, she's using to reinforce the conversation that she's already having, that her mom's a total nag and she doesn't understand how things are. And so we get stuck when we're in these conversations, like any conversation that you have repeatedly. Oh, my daughter says, repeat offenders are proof that your system doesn't work. We were talking about the criminal justice system one day, and she said, repeat offenders are proof that your system doesn't work. And I think that's such great advice. Like, if you have conversations that are repeat offenders, that's proof that that conversation that you're having over and over and over doesn't work. And the fact that you know that is because you have to keep having it. So really, what we're talking about here is how to break repeat offender conversations. What happens when we're in that middle conversation where we're having the conversation with each other and we're reinforcing our view and they're reinforcing their view, then what we try to do in our half of the conversation is we're trying to change their internal conversation without really acknowledging it. We're putting all of our focus on changing their mind, even though we don't really know what their internal conversation is. Like, even if they tell us parts of it, we're really not getting the whole internal conversation. And that's always going to have mixed results because we can't ever know what someone else's internal conversation is. We certainly can't be in the business of controlling other people's internal conversations, right? Like, that never works. And changing another person's mind, that rarely works as well. So you can see how those conversations, we have them over and over and over again because we're putting all of our focus and attention on trying to get someone else's mind to change instead of putting the attention on the mind that we could actually change, which is our own. And so I'm going to give you a little personal example here of how this played out because, and this so often happens with podcasts, when I get set to record them, then something happens. I get like a bunch of chances to practice what I'm going to talk to you about. So I should, I don't know, maybe make a podcast about me winning $1 million and see if I can make that happen. So what happened this weekend is my husband and I had this big, stupid fight. And the crux of it, like, we were having sort of a philosophical discussion. And he thought I accused him of something in the philosophical discussion. Okay, so I'm having like one internal conversation as I'm like arguing this philosophical point. And in the midst of that, I said something that caused him to start having an internal conversation where he thought I had accused him of something. Okay, but I didn't mean what he thought I meant. And so all of my trying to tell him that that's not what I meant didn't do anything to change his mind. And the fact that it wasn't changing his mind changed my internal conversation. So he's thinking that, I accused him of this thing. And I'm starting to think things like, that's stupid. I would never accuse him of that. Or, of course I didn't mean that. Like, why isn't he listening to me? Tell him that that's not what I meant. He never listens. Can you hear the little bit of tone in that? He never listens. He's so sensitive. Like, why is he like this? We were having a nice conversation. And then everything he said became proof of what I was thinking, that he wasn't listening to me, that he was being ridiculous. And you can hear that tone in my voice. So then everything I was saying becomes proof for his internal conversation that I disrespect him and that I think that, he would do these terrible things that he thought I was accusing him of. And that conversation, those fights can go on forever. Like, those fights are so dangerous to couples. And there's these fights when we have them with our children, like, they're so dangerous to kids because we get dug in on our side. And can you hear like all the things I was making like this fight mean about him and all the things he was making it mean about me? So what I'm suggesting that we do is, instead of using our conversations to try to convince the other person of our side, that we clean up our internal conversations first. Okay, right there, right in the middle of the fight. Like, this isn't some big, long process. You just have to take a deep breath and notice what you're thinking that's contributing to your current problem. And you can hear in my side, I was saying things like, that's stupid. Of course, I would never accuse him of that. Okay, I was thinking that his thinking was stupid. And when I said things like, he's not even listening, he always does this, like, he never listens to me, I was thinking like all of those things are becoming part of the problem of the argument. And those are things that I actually have control over. Like, I can stop thinking his side is stupid and recognize that this person that I love, that my husband, that his side has merit. Why does it have merit? Because this person I love is thinking it. Like that alone gives it merit. And I'm sure, again, you can hear it in my voice. Like when I think that, it softens my side of the argument. Then the next step is easy for me. Like once I'm seeing it a little bit from his side, and I'm not thinking that this person that I love should be different than he is, not thinking that he should have heard it differently, not thinking that he should be doing anything different than he is, then I'm free to take responsibility for my half of the fight, for my piece in the argument. And it was really easy for me to say, I'm sorry that you heard it that way. That was not my intent. I would never think that you do that. Like, I'm so sorry. That moment right there shifts the course of the argument. And the piece that's important to know here, there's two pieces that are important to know. One is that you can really only do that if you mean it. And so it's worth taking a second and truly thinking what their internal dialogue might be, to really listen to their part of the argument and acknowledge that that other person's side has merit to them. Okay, that's part of their internal dialogue, and you're not going to change it. Okay, your words are only going to be used as evidence for the side that they already believe. So you're not going to change their side with your words. I think if, the last couple of years of politics have taught us anything, is that no one is looking to be convinced of anything that they don't want to believe. Two people, like you look at the halftime show in the Super Bowl, and half the people loved it and half the people hated it. Okay. People don't want to change their mind about things. And it's like that with our loved ones too. They're not looking to be convinced of your side. They want their side heard always. So then that leads you to the next point, which is, well, then aren't I just letting him off the hook? Like, if I apologize, like, what if I was right? What if my side has merit and he doesn't listen to it? And like, now he's off the hook, then every fight becomes my responsibility. And here's the thing. They're not getting away with anything when you do this, because they already are doing the thing that they're doing. Like, they're already having the internal dialogue that they have. And like, you arguing with them is not making things better. And when you change your own internal dialogue, you get to stop arguing. And getting to stop arguing, you don't have to change what you believe. Like, I still believe the thing that I believed when we had the argument. All that I was owning up to is that I said something that he heard a certain way that hurt his feelings. I'm not even saying that I hurt his feelings, but I'm saying that the thing that I said, he heard in a way that was hurtful. And I can see how it would be hurtful. Like, I could have said it better. People, like, conversations are challenging. Honestly, it's kind of amazing to me that that we're all as clear as we are. When you think about the fact that I'm having an internal dialogue, and then we have an external conversation between the two of us, and then the other person is always having an internal dialogue that oftentimes doesn't have anything to do with me. They can be thinking about work, or they can be hungry. There's a million things that are going on in people's minds. And when you come to conversations, understanding that their internal dialogue, that your external conversation is oftentimes just reinforcing their internal dialogue, then you get less dug in to continuing the argument. And again, I want to be really clear that you're not doing this for the person that you're arguing with. I'm not suggesting that you take responsibility for pieces that aren't yours. You're not pretending that you're not mad. You're not pretending that you didn't make any valid points. You're not taking responsibility for the argument. You're taking responsibility for your part in it. And if you're not asking the other person to take responsibility for their part, because it goes back to that thing where you can control what the other person does. That's where a lot of people that try this, where my own clients try it and then they come back. This is why coaching is so great, because they try it and then they come back and then we tweak it a little bit. But what I want you to do is if you try it and then you want the other person to take responsibility for their half, you're still off track. You're still trying to change their internal dialogue just because you're changing yours and it feels more fair. No, that never works. Oh, the fairness. Oh, it gets us every time. No, you just want to stay in your internal dialogue and find out what you're thinking that's contributing to the problem. And in the example I gave, it was things like, that's stupid. Of course I wouldn't say that. Like, he never listens. I don't even remember all the things that I was thinking, but noticing that I was having all those judgments about him during the argument, that's something that I can own 100%. And when I own that and say, you know what, that isn't helping anything, then I get to relax and apologize for my piece of it. Because I was contributing to the argument, thinking that he's being ridiculous is contributing to the argument. And when I took a minute to say, I can see how you feel that way, and I'm really sorry, that isn't what I meant. Like, that's enough to shift the conversation. That coupled with the idea that if he had kept being mad, I would have felt better anyway. Like, for us, that did end the argument. But even if he had stayed mad, it would have ended the argument for me, because I would have felt good and like my thoughts were cleaned up and I had apologized for my piece and I would feel done. And I could have gone on and had an enjoyable rest of the day, even if he'd stayed mad. And I have in the past. You know, sometimes things happen with our kids or our spouses or work colleagues or with a neighbor, and they stay mad. And that's not up to us. That's what I'm saying. You stay out of their internal dialogue and you just clean up your side. And once you've done that, then the argument can be over for you, even if that other person is still sort of sorting out their half. All of this is for you. And like I said, especially when it comes to our teens, we don't want to be trying to control what they're thinking. So much of the teen years is about handing over reins, more and more control of their life. You're not going to convince your teen that she should be excited about getting her homework done before she goes to her friends. None of your logical arguments about how much better she's going to feel when it's done are going to outweigh how much she doesn't want to do it. And so the next time you find yourself on one of these repeat offender conversations, I want you to think about this podcast, think about your internal dialogue and shifting that and staying out of convincing them to shift their internal dialogue. Okay, your conversations are going to be so much more productive and so much less frustrating. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm always here for you. Allie at allieirwin.com.